Good morning, good morning. We are on, 3/9 March. 12 days before spring, the first day that is. Hope y'all doing well this Money Making Monday. Get it how you live. However, um, I just realized a theme that a motif that I had been kind of outlining about the boomers, right? How I never leave the boomers alone. But there's a personal narrative behind that. And I'm going to shed a little light on that here. As far as the divide between boomers and millennials, all right? And I'm going to use this as a springboard to something that it's kind of trivial, but it's a current event occurring up in Washington, D.C. I've gone over it before that boomers have an entitlement sense. And this isn't intended to be like racial, but obviously you see what I would fill out on the Scantron. So I can relate to that level of experience, just a little better. Even though I've seen that dynamic across different aspects, right? So let's take all emotions off the table when it comes to describing systems, okay? Because that's usually what blinds people. So when I say take out emotions, I mean words like good, bad, the greater good, better for us, what we went through. All these things harken back to how a human would process it. But sometimes to demystify or dispatch like your internal self from these systems, you have to look at it almost as if you were a robot. It's counterintuitive, but it's the only way you can break it. All right. And with that said, certain mechanisms depend on each other. So for instance, if you were raised in church and your parents went to college, even if you had one parent, they went to college, 9 times out of 10, you know what I'm saying? Like you're gonna pray for, or your guardian or family is gonna pray for you to get good grades at school. Not because they're behind or dumb, but because the systems that are sacred to them, they're always mentioned together, right? And likewise, when you go to school, when you go off to school, a lot of our mothers and fathers and guardians prayed for us and this and that. Now that seems normal, it seems typical, but if you just look at the infrastructure of education and I'll just say mental redirection, those systems are always mentioned together. Okay, so following that thread, most people who go to college and they follow the traditional degree path. You know what I'm saying? Along the way, they make networks. They may join certain organizations. They fill out their adult life, different departments of it. All the things they tell you to do. And I'm not attacking this at all. I'm describing just almost like a little grid. I'm not even attacking this whole, if you decide to do that. So at some point, these very same people have to, being we humans and we, only have so much time, they have to exalt this system. Which means that anything that comes from like another source or another way to do it, they're going to be, I've found, either opposed to it or they just won't get it. Like the boom I'm gonna pick on, I'm not gonna state the name, but is the prototypical example of everything I just said. Sweet person. And that's the hard part, is that people who judge these systems from the outside. They think every single person in an organization, part of a board, in some sort of society, they have 2 master's degrees. They have this very fancy syllable job, right? All these people are not evil people. The problem is the systems that they get into are already installed. So much like a computer, if you install that operating system, you're gonna kind of atone with that system, And people love to stand on the corner and, pass it to the left and talk all kinds of shit and say, I'm gonna change it from the inside. There's a reason that's a saying. Just basic math will tell you that takes years, if possible at all. Usually doesn't happen like that. So, boomers feel that their sacrifice was like insurance for their children. So, a lot of sons and daughters of boomers are led to think that they did that for us, so all we got to do is participate in what they did. Now, the crux of all this is what happens when those systems start to unfold. Unfold meaning decompose or come apart. What happens when, the race changes? It ain't no, they moving the goalposts, they hating on us, no, it ain't none of that. The entire arena is being reformatted. When I say arena, symbolically I'm talking about economics, purchasing power, technological mobility, really international business. All these things are not just topics anymore. They really never were. It's just the speed at which you can access these things now is astronomical. And the youth coming up, they're interested in that by default, and they should be. But what happens when their interest collides with this whole ego, this real misguided ego trip associated with boomers? Now, I just told you a couple minutes ago the boomer that I was thinking about. I've noticed some of the most successful ones, have the most negative attitude. And I think I finally cracked the code on what it is. I don't think it's really intentional. That's what I'm getting at. See, when I was younger, like 10 years ago or so, I was very adamant on saying that it was just aggression and they pissed off and they hating. And I said, wait a minute, I'm just doing a U-turn back into the same old, crab in the bucket mentality. It's polished, it's refined, it's educated, but it's the same material. But then I said, they're not intentionally hating. It's that they were told what model to follow for so long, but then they're forced to look at, I'm going to just say it, the people. They're forced to look at the situation. They're forced to look at the details. And they're not happy about it. And the only kind of subterfuge or deflector they can use is, I'm trying to get you a job. 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 Not insulting working people. Not insulting people who found another way. But that's cap ultimately, because that means you believe more so in money than actually building opportunities. You know what I mean? And when I say building opportunities, I mean, vitalizing your own communities. Now, we're not going to get into that too deep because that's a whole forest worth of rabbit holes. But it's funny how when you do the right thing for basically your whole life, how do you end up bitter in the end? How do you end up pissed off? If anything, you would be wise, you'd be gracious, you would be dispensing wisdom to the youth. I know we're not in the tribal days and, the shamans and the medicine men. I'm not being that fantastical with it. But what I'm saying is, why is it this pattern of, like FML? Like, that's the emanation that I get from a lot of these people. You know the type I'm talking about. And before you get on here and attack me and say, ain't nothing wrong with black men doing something, ain't nothing wrong with black women doing something, I come from that. You're missing the entire mark if you think I'm attacking successful, regimented, credentialed up black people. I'm part of that crew. I'm part of that element. I'm part of that staircase of this is what we should be doing. I grew up in that shit, so if anything, I've earned the right to talk this kind of thing. It'd be different if I had never had anything, never had any family, never had any support, and I was just on here running my damn mouth. And I just get a little bothered when people, every time you share an opinion, they think you're hating on something. That's childish, and that's why certain elements of people's group thinking is so behind. Because you think every time somebody challenges your stance, you think they're hating. Same shit kids do on a playground. Anyway, so this particular individual that I'm thinking about, and you'll see me kind of frowning, smiling, because I love this person. I feel like they have like a good soul, an old soul as well. Weird thing about old souls, like you could be in your mid-20s and meet somebody with an old soul in their 70s, and based on y'all's link, it's almost like y'all, it's almost like a sibling type thing, even if they're decades older. Anyway, and this person decided to tell me something, because we were talking, and then I was in the midst of a career change and things like that. And so she's saying, what's your passion? And, the typical gamut of like, what do you want to do? What you good at? And all that. And, she knows that I've, been a very like passionate writer over the years. A few screenplays, we'll get into that in another video. I'm actually seeking, if you guys know any ways to self-publish. I'm trying to become more studious, come out of my shell, be a little more engaging. So I would love some advice on the self-publishing thread. I find it very interesting. And like I just said, with so many opportunities out here now, it's really, what do you want to do? Where's the button for it? Let's push it and go for it. There's no more, this is how we did it back in the... And I think that is what drives the resentment. Is because it's almost like the boomers had a playbook and their playbook worked. But because they never looked at any other playbook, they're almost intimidated and threatened by any other means of success and structure. And the funny part is when I say kid, I mean obviously elementary school through like adolescence, late teens. If you initiate a certain desire in that person to master what they're good at, and your body language supports their joy. In other words, if you see a kid playing with the piano, let's say he hasn't had any training, and you just see him or her just light up. You just see them almost like Ray Charles, just in this zone where you can tell there's something about their intelligence is latched to that gift. You know, past life or genetics, that's not important. What I'm saying is that's one of their tools. And you know, you could see that there's no real stamp on it, but you know, anywhere from 3 to 9 years old, you know. But if you smile as that child plays, you know, and then you know, it's kind of noise at this point, but you smile, you support it, you know, who's that in there playing? You kind of encase that moment in sacredness and positivity. Fast forward, because you know that's very dear to me when you tell a person they can do something. That's on every Hallmark card and every little, you know, donation foundation. But if you've actually seen that in real life, it's very transformative. You know, it's how we should be treating each other. But now let's take that same prodigy or, you know, young musician, and you frown every time they play. You tell them to turn that noise off. You blast trap music over their practice routine. You know, like you distort their process, and you are programming them to say your joy is not, you know, worth much. It's just like a polarity type thing I'm explaining here. That kid may still unfold that passion, but their road to it is not going to be under your model because you didn't support their joy in it at first. And what this particular boomer decided to tell me was that, you know, in this day and age, why be a writer? Because it's not going to bring you instant success. And this wasn't, I don't know, man, this wasn't, you know, it wasn't a constructive talk. It was, I've seen this happen, I know this, and it's not going to happen. Anybody who speaks energy over your life like that, you have to be mindful of the lack mentality. Even if they so-called are paid and, you know, all these accolades and clout, whatever, you know, certificates, phone numbers, like, it doesn't matter. Anybody who is running that type of language on you, I take it you have your own techniques to diminish that, but you just got to be careful with that. And I've noticed that with a lot of these successful, super ass, I'm a somebody boomer people, is that it's always this, in my day, this is how it worked, not realizing your day, your prime as it were, we've been out of that. It's not the 60s anymore. It's not the 70s anymore. It's definitely not the 80s no more, right? You know, even people like me now, we can't just keep talking about, oh man, the 90s, man, the 90s, you could just do this and everything was organic and, you know, food tasted, but we can't keep doing this kind of retro tennis. You know, at the end of the day, we can't go back. So, it's just the way she said it. And you get to a point in your heart and your life where you're so confident, all that like revolutionary, you know, bust back kind of debate energy, you just let it go. You know, you just let it go. And you just almost like smile to yourself. You know what I mean? Because a small part of you, even if you want to shoot back, a small part of you is humbled by that person's ignorance. Because they're willing to take old templates and low-key kind of hate on you because they can't divorce themselves from this model of success. And I'll end the first part with this. If everything went so well, if everything was so regimented and you did everything right, why the hell are you approaching your mid-70s and still going to work?